Welcome back to the Blackletter Podcast. We set out to create an entertaining and exciting podcast about law and business. Blackletter, the name, comes from the Gothic typeset. Over time, Blackletter became the only font that English law books were printed in. It made it harder for kind of the common person to understand what the English law books said. Blackletter came to represent something that was law, that was set in stone, that was sort of old and a well-settled fundamental principle of law. We're here to demystify black-letter law. We're here to demystify things that happen in business and law and where those two meet. And I hope you have fun listening. Hi, this is Tom Dunlap. Welcome back to another episode of the Blackletter Podcast. This is one of our longer episodes again, and with me live here by video, I've got Jason Levin, the author of a book not about networking. I'm not going to say that. I'm going to let Jason tell you about his book. And I actually read this book before our show and was really intrigued by it. And I will tell you all listeners that I'm going to make an Excel spreadsheet when we get done with the show today, and you'll learn more why in a second. Well, welcome to the show, Jason. So tell us a little bit about your book and about yourself and about your company. I know you're on a board with my chief marketing officer of the legal LMA. Can't remember what that stands for. Legal Marketing Association, which kind of helps promote marketing and networking of marketing between people at law firms.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about that, and I'll let you talk instead of me.
Tom, I appreciate it. Thanks so much for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here. For the last 11 years, I've been a speaker, trainer, and coach, where I have helped attorneys, law firms, folks in professional services lean into their business development activities, as well as make intentional career moves. Originally from the great state of New Jersey, so I value a good bagel, good Chinese food, and a good slice of pizza. When I think about the book and why I wrote Relationships to Infinity, the Art and Science of Keeping in Touch, we say keep in touch, and yet we struggle to do so. And so this is something that I've been wanting to do for a long time. I wrote the book during the pandemic because I saw that we all turned into wilted flowers. And I was asking myself, well, why? And in reality, as human beings, we need connection. We need that human connection. What I'm excited about with the book is a couple of things that I've, held near and dear to my heart. One, keeping in touch is an aspiration. It is not something that you say, it's something that you try to do every day. Second, when we think about networks, I wanted to bring to the universe all the academic research that exists around network theory. We use the word network, we use the word networking, and yet we don't know where that comes from. And so for me, I thought it was really important to bring that academic research into things. And then finally, what's the social science around what goes on in our heads, why we can't keep in touch? What are those different types of barriers? And, you had mentioned the Legal Marketing Association and what's brought us together. One of the things that I love about the association world in general is that it builds community. And so actually during the pandemic, for me, one of my great outlets was being active in an association that I thought was important and working with other legal marketers to figure out within their firms, well, how can we support our firms and how can we support our attorneys and practice groups get through these types of things? So that's a little bit about me and the book and why I wrote it.
So a couple questions. So first, I don't know if you know this, I was born in New Jersey myself. I would not say that I'm from New Jersey because I left when I was 5, but I'm familiar with it. I lived in Hoboken after college as well. But setting aside New Jersey for a second, so I did notice also that you used to be at Anderson Consulting.
Yes.
Random question. My brother was there let's see, the early 2000s, I think. It was probably 2005, 6, 7, around there. It was a bearing point, I guess, when they got acquired and then KPMG. So you didn't happen to be in the DC Anderson Consulting, or were you a different one?
No, I was
just random.
I was New York based Anderson Consulting. But the one thing that you and I have in common, Tom, is the United Way of the National Capital Area.
So you were
So, and actually at the same time, so we have actually folks in common. So I was actually on For those that don't know, the United Way of the National Capital Area is the United Way for the DC metro area. You have the overall board, and then there are regional counties, both in Maryland, Virginia, and DC. You were on Loudoun County, right?
I was. Yeah, I was in
Yeah,
the Loudon rack, as we call it. So
right.
here we are, Jason. We're engaging in staying in touch or getting in touch or building a relationship, as your book says. And I think we're going to get into that in the next section a little bit more. But so tell me, background wise, when you thought about writing this book, and you said you did it during the COVID pandemic, what did your business look like during the COVID pandemic? What did your relationships look like before you wrote this book? Is it something you were actively doing, or did this book inspire you to take your own advice, or were you already doing that and just taking what you did and putting it into writing?
Yeah, I think for me, this is something that I have been doing my entire life. And I feel very blessed that keeping in touch was something that was instilled in me by my grandparents and my parents, and just the notion that your friends, your family are really, really important to you. I remember my junior year of college, I had
Right.
these midterms that I had to get through, and it's the winter time, and my mom's calling me up. She's like, "How are your midterms?" And I said, "Well, right now I'm finishing up my holiday cards." She's like, "What? You're not studying?" I'm like, "Well, I'm probably going to get a B in the class, but I want to get these holiday
Wow.
cards out." So
Can I tell you, I do not know any college student anywhere that I've ever run into, any of my friends in college or even in law school, that wrote holiday cards until they were full on adults, maybe until after they were married. So, I mean, it's kind of insane that as a college student, you were getting holiday cards out. So, congratulations. And wow, you were very kind of mature, like,
yeah,
in this
I
field. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because like in college, I was president of student government. I was already, I feel very blessed that I had a series of senior level executives that were just schooling me in, okay,
Wow.
here are the things you need to do.
Right.
And if you're going to take relationships seriously, then you need to put the time in to do it. And so back in, the mid 90s, it was just an analog world. The email was just coming in. So, but at the end of the day, I mean, I keep all of you look at my stamps that I have here, celebrate stamps, to celebrate wins, love stamps for the people that are important and close to me, appreciation stamps, thank yous. So for me, this is not something that I'm like, oh, it would be nice to write a book on keeping in touch. This is part of my DNA. And frankly,
Right.
Tom, my favorite topic. This is my favorite topic, Tom.
Excellent. So anything background wise we want to cover kind of in this intro part, because the next time we come back, I want to talk about the biggest challenge you faced, and maybe that's around your book. I really want to dive into the substance of your book. And I told you I'd read it. And actually, I'll ask you background wise. So also, you wrote a chapter about LinkedIn. And
Yes.
I have heard from attorneys, and this is we have a lot of attorneys who listen to this because they like, hey, I listen to, and I happen to talk to them. For attorneys, I think LinkedIn's really valuable. I think it's more valuable than Facebook or Twitter or Instagram. And I know TikTok's coming up, and that's a younger generation thing. But when looking at our client base and who we want to connect with as IP counsel or corporate counsel in the business world, LinkedIn's probably the most important social media platform.
Sure.
You talk about using it I have 4,000 plus connections. How many of those connections do I regularly communicate with? Probably like 50, if I'm lucky. Probably most of the attorneys in my firm, it's like 10. So
Right.
how do you change that? How do you leverage that? And you talk about it in your book, but I'm kind of curious about your thoughts on LinkedIn just before we leave this segment that you could share with, especially aimed at professional services, because I'm really personally interested in that. And I know we have a lot of people who are professional services people. Could you talk about that for a couple seconds?
More than happy to. I'm more than happy to talk
Okay.
about my relationship with LinkedIn. LinkedIn started in the summer of 2003. I joined LinkedIn in January of 2004. So I have been on LinkedIn now for 18 years.
Wow.
And so the platform has significantly evolved since I initially joined. When I initially joined, LinkedIn was just about the connections piece.
Right.
But I think there's two other pieces to LinkedIn that are extremely important, especially for attorneys and raising their profile. The second is your profile itself and how you fill out your profile and what you add to your profile, and having a robust profile around you and who you are as a person and the problems you solve. And then the third piece is what is the content that you're sharing on the platform? And
Okay.
so often when I think about LinkedIn, usually like, oh, tell me about LinkedIn. And then I'll go back to them like, well, tell me about your goals. And so LinkedIn is the tool, but you need to have your own intentions and your own goals. And what do you want to do with the platform? So for me, when I think about your current connections, what are you doing with LinkedIn to celebrate the wins and the different kinds of things that are going on in your network? So,
Sure.
the easy thing to do is do a like and a quick congrats. Well, how about taking it a step further? You say, well, I saw on LinkedIn you got a promotion. Let's catch up in 2 or 3 months after you get integrated into that new role and see how things are going. So, one of your in-house counsel people might be joining a new organization and you want to continue on that relationship. I also think about LinkedIn in terms of your own thought leadership, right? You might want to write an article for your firm on a particular topic, whether it be IP or corporate or tax or you name the practice area. Well, LinkedIn is a great way to be the megaphone of your own thought leadership. And so these are more activities. It's kind of like brushing your teeth. It's kind of like being able to do these things on a habitual basis. I think too often attorneys get so focused in their head, like, oh, everybody knows this. Well, it's kind of like, no, that's your special sauce. That is your gift. And your job is not to internalize that, but rather share that in bite sized pieces with your community. And dare I say,
Okay.
you can also be one more thing. You can use LinkedIn to be an ambassador for your firm. So whenever folks in your own practice group or in peer practice groups are doing really great things, sharing that with your network and saying, I'm really excited about what my firm did here. They got a really great win for this client. Look at the news on here. I'm so excited. We've got these folks on Chambers, whatever that looks like. So there's a
Sure.
multitude of ways that attorneys can think about the LinkedIn platform to advance their goals.
Gotcha. So I always repost articles. I know I should probably comment about them. LinkedIn gives you good suggestions. So another question about LinkedIn. My last question before I move on to
Sure.
section two, because I debate about this. I have debated with others, and you're probably like, that's a stupid thing to debate about. It's obvious. But the title that you put, so you put your name, but you say something like, do you put attorney or do you put attorney and business startup counselor or attorney and scientist or none of those as an attorney, and you say, advisor to the world's best companies? Like, what is I see so many different things that people put, and they're all lawyers. I mean, yes, they're all lawyers, but when you present yourself, do you have any advice or thoughts on that little kind of, I don't know, I don't think it's optional, but the titling of yourself? So I
So,
see people try to be creative with that.
so first and foremost, as a member of the Legal Marketing Association, I would always recommend that you talk to your top legal marketing executive within your own organization
Okay.
first and foremost. And whatever they say will be correct because you have brought them in for their expertise. So that's rule number one. Rule number one, if
Love
you have a
it.
top legal marketing executive in your own organization, they are right, and I bless and honor what they say. So first and
So
foremost,
Amy is listening, right? You know that Amy, my chief art, is listening to this now live. Okay. So
all
got
right,
it. Checkbox.
all right,
I'm with
check.
you.
All right. So then the second thing is one of the things that we know about the LinkedIn algorithm is that the search engine optimization off of your profile is actually very, very strong. And
Oh,
so I'm a fan of doing a blend of what's your role and what's your role in that organization as one of those things. But then doing structured SEO Google searches on like, well, who are, if I were to do IP attorney or, starting to play around with what are the different words that are searched on you, and again, your marketing team can help you figure that
ah,
out,
very
right?
smart. I see.
Right.
Okay.
And so
I
then
like it.
and then integrating. So how do we integrate those words into a phrase that people will understand? But then again, at the end of the day, when a search is going on, on IP attorneys or IP Virginia or whatever that looks like, that your name is going to come up. You know why? Because in search engine optimization, your LinkedIn profile is the first thing that comes off of a Google search, Tom.
So you want me to put best IP attorney in the United States? That should be my title from now on.
Well, then you get into ethics laws. Then you get into ethics laws.
Best is very subjective. So best according to me. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, I mean, then you have like Gillette, which is the best the man can get, which, is anyway, I hear you on the tagline, but my advice to you is consult your legal marketing executive. And then two, I would do a combination of where you're at, what you do, and then integrate in some keywords that you would do off of a structured SEO analysis.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Perfect. Awesome. Okay, Jason. Well, thank you for this first segment of our 3-part series with you. So sure. We know about your background. We have the title of your book. You hold it up again.
Happy
you have it. I know you have it there. I got it on Kindle. Awesome. So I read it on Kindle. And folks, it's 106 pages, I think, not super long. So very digestible. And it has the fields for you to use to make your Excel spreadsheet, which we'll talk about probably in the next episode. So thanks, Jason. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Blackletter Podcast. We will be back next week, which for Jason and me will be in about 2 minutes, with the next segment of the Blackletter Podcast, where we talk to Jason about a challenge he's overcome and a little bit more detail about, I suspect, relationship growing. I don't want to say networking because it seems like that's not the word we should use. But anyway, we'll see you next time on the Blackletter Podcast. Download us wherever you get your podcasts, iHeartRadio, iTunes, Spotify, whatever it is. We'll see you next time. Thanks.
That's all for today's episode of Blackletter. Thanks again for listening. Join us next time when we talk about more Blackletter issues in creative ways. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode, and check out our website at blackletterstudios.com.